What are we doing here?
So today this is our first podcast.
First podcast.
First podcast ever.
Podcast.
Let's go. So I think we should start by introducing ourselves.
Go ahead.
No, you should go ahead.
Alright. Okay. So I'm ThatEmoGuy. I've been working for the last 15 years professionally, but doing a lot of gigs and part-time jobs from the age of 14, 15. Primarily specialized in operations, but been very curious about emotions, learning that through the last few years, and just trying to be a better human.
And that brings us to Better Human.
And that brings us to Better Human. Better Human is just a way for us to bring awareness about emotions and the role that they play in our lives. I think it's something that's integral for all of us to know, but interestingly, it's something that we're born with, it's something we take with us all the way through our life, but it's not something that's really given much importance. And then you have an entire profession, therapy, which is basically really good people who are there to help us navigate through our emotions, which we should have had an education about growing up anyway. And we are here to try to create awareness about that. So that's what I think we're sitting here for.
Cool. So that's basically the introduction for you and Better Human, right? And I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Prapti, as you must know from our Instagram videos. But yeah, I am currently working here at the same time with Arjun because again, I have also had internship experience, corporate experience for the past 2 years, and I also feel like whatever you strive for and whatever you want to build in this world is very important. And I think obviously we won't get to step 100 by the end of the day, but then even going to step maybe 20, it would be a big deal for us.
Think so?
Right? Yes, great.
Another fun thing is, I'm a much older generation than you are. I feel 1960s, I'm born 1990s, and you're so I'm a millennial, you're
Gen Z.
Gen Z. Okay. Where is the distinction between, where does Z end and all the alpha, beta, gamma start?
Z ends at I think 10, 2010.
2019?
2010.
2010. Okay. So 1997 till 2010 is Gen Z, and then after that you have your Greek.
Alpha.
Yeah. Okay.
Greek.
Yeah. Okay. Greek words. Oh yeah, that howling in the background is my cat.
Yeah,
One of my 3 cats.
That's Phoebe.
They keep coming in and out. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, here you go. Closing it. Stop. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting to have this conversation because one thing that I feel is that our generation is learning more about emotions now, but I feel like your generation is more connected with it. Sometimes in a very good way, sometimes it just becomes a lot. So this understanding or bridging of the different generations, I think is going to be fun. I think.
No, I don't even. I think it'll be fun, but then I also want to see where it leads us.
Fun.
Right? They love the Ottoman here.
Yeah, there's something about it. They love the smell. Anyway.
Curtains.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with talking about emotions in general, right? Because we are talking about emotional intelligence here. What does okay? How do you define emotional intelligence? What makes a person highly emotionally intelligent, according to you?
So, funnily enough, there's no objective test for it. Like you have with general intelligence, what we call IQ. You have a bunch of questions and you can get scale on that. I'm sure I fall average to below average.
You don't say that.
I don't say, okay, I shouldn't say that. Okay.
You actually shouldn't say that.
Okay, I shouldn't say that. But with emotional intelligence, so to answer the question of what it is, first I want to like just touch on emotions. But to understand is how can a person be emotionally intelligent? Okay, so we'll come to emotions first. So emotions are basically signals that our body gives us to something that happens on the outside. That something can be any sort of a stimulus, it can be any sort of a reaction, it can be fires, it can be crackers, it can be cars moving across the road. So how we're feeling internally to that the emotion is a response to a few things that we have born taught and then our experiences over life. So the way I can summarize this simply would be beliefs, values, and experiences. So our beliefs are who we are as a person, the identity that we have. The values are what we pick up along the way, either by our teachers, our parents, society, friends. The thing that we layer on top of our beliefs are our identity and say that, okay, this makes a part of me. And our experiences either reaffirm those beliefs and values or they override them and say, no, for the practical world that you're living in, this particular value or belief doesn't work for you. And that you is a sum of all the experiences of the environment in which we live. Right? Two people could live in the exact same situation, but they could be across the world in totally different cultures. For example, India and America or India and Japan. The same set of triggers may not result in the same experience, which may not result in the same belief and the value. And these three fundamentally, in my opinion, is what creates an emotion. Right? Over time, what happens is we start reacting to certain triggers in certain ways, which we build over time because we're put in certain situations and then it keeps reaffirming our beliefs and values or it changes. And that response or that what we feel inherently inside to something happening is the emotion. Uh, how is someone defined as emotionally intelligent is there are different frameworks for it, but simply put, are you able to recognize the emotion that you're feeling in that moment when something happens? Once you're actually able to stop and feel that emotion, are you able to label it accurately? Because it's kind of like diagnosing something, right? If you diagnose the wrong thing, then the solve for it also is different. Similarly, different emotions have different ways in which you deal with that particular emotion. So, are you aware of the exact emotion that you're feeling? Are you able to express it? And once you express it, are you able to regulate it? And if you can do that for yourself, are you also able to put yourself in other people's shoes and basically understand what they're going through uh, by not actually being in their place but being able to what we call empathy, right? And the more we're able to do this and the more we're able to recognize bodily reactions to it, facial recognition or responses to those emotions, feelings, moods, the better I would say one's quotient of understanding emotional intelligence is.
There's also the issue here that a lot of people, you can take people in India specifically, right? Because again, we kind of grow up in a very bilingual households, right? We have a lot of words for a lot of different things, but sometimes when it comes to emotions, we lack words for it, right? Again, there are a lot of different issues everywhere. There are people who don't know how to express it or don't know how to label it and say that to somebody else because anxiety due to drinking a lot of coffee and anxiety because you have exams tomorrow have the same exact vibes or the exact same bodily reaction, right? But then at the end of the day, you also have to be capable enough to understand that where this is originating from. So, does okay? So, do you also have to take that in account when you're talking about emotional intelligence?
Well, the first thing that you said that was really interesting is we don't really know what to call it. And I think that's the first problem. A lot of us think we either understand our emotions really well and don't need this at all, or emotions are just a waste. Or a lot of us have absolutely no idea about it but don't feel that it's important enough that it matters. The reason why we can't label our emotions, and like multiple studies have been done on this where people on average can only name three emotions. There are core, at its core, there are eight really strong emotions from which you branch out and you have like 60 plus. But far more than 60 ways of expressing, but we don't even know more than three or four. And the ones that we generally learn from movies or TV shows. But the most common question that people ask every day is, how are you? And the answer is always fine or good or some variation of this. Neither of those are actually emotions. In the wheel of emotions, there is no such word as fine. There is no good. How you feeling is what is the emotion that you're sitting with right now. Where are you? Right. And I think that's because we haven't really had an education on this, right? We don't know beyond certain. Okay, I'm sure you look at Hulk and you think anger. Yeah. Similarly, when they crack a joke, you feel joy and there's laughter, like the few standard ones that we pick up here and there. But that vocabulary is really important because again, it's kind of like diagnosing the wrong medical issue. If you don't know what exactly the root emotion is from which you're feeling something, then you might end up giving it the wrong medication. Which is what I think happens a lot, is that we don't really know what we're feeling, the emotion that's causing the feeling. And we end up applying wrong fixes, which is why we kind of sometimes end up digging deeper holes for ourselves. So yeah, I think that again is why we're sitting and talking about this. It's important.
I mean, there are also societies where they only focus on one singular side of an emotion. For example, we have so many words for different emotions, right? I can't think of one from the top of my head right now, but then I know there are words in Japanese for the feeling of wanting to let go but cannot letting go of, but cannot let go of something when you want to let go of it.
Okay.
Or in Thai, there is that feeling. There's a proper word for the emotion that you feel when you suppress yourself, or when not. And this is like when you suppress yourself for the greater good. When you say no, because that's more, that's better for a society from a societal view rather than anything else, right? So there are words like this. There are specific words for specific emotions everywhere. But I feel like different cultures, they focus on different specific sides of emotion according to how the culture has grown over the course of time.
That makes sense.
Right? So what are your thoughts on this segment? Because this is something that I actually like a lot.
I think there's definitely. I was actually talking to a friend of mine recently. He said that there's two ways in which you can look at emotions. One is outward in, one is inward out. The way that I'm describing emotions right now is more of an outward in. That means something happens and then you feel something on the inside. As a reaction or
Yeah.
response to a stimulus on the outside, right? It's a very westernized way of looking at things, which is not a bad thing. It is a way of looking at things, and I'm not saying the other way is also a good or bad thing. But yes, a lot of the language, at least I'm accustomed to, is reading people in this space. Mark Duckett, Daniel Goleman. These are people who are famous in the field of emotions and emotion intelligence. So their research is what I've learned. I understand there's in India and many other cultures a totally different way of looking at things, which is um, how do you react to the world outside? How do you respond to the world outside based on the feeling that you are recognizing on the inside, which is a totally different approach towards it, which I've not had the opportunity yet to explore too much, but it's really interesting. And I think for me, when I heard this, the first thought that came to my mind is, wouldn't it be great if both of them could mesh together? Because that would cover what maybe either one of them is unable to specifically look at. So I think different cultures will definitely have different ways of saying and expressing different things. When I was in New Zealand, they did the haka, which is one of the really famous. I'm using the word. I'm sure this word is wrong. It's a dance That when we look at it, it looks like a dance, but for them, it's something that's very culturally rooted. I remember seeing that in
Or
the stadium.
ritualistic.
Ritualistic, yeah. So they all line up, and there's a very specific set of actions that they perform with specific words and sounds, right? There's a meaning for them in that, which we may not understand. So I think emotion is something that transcends our vocabulary for sure, and I'm very certain it changes from culture to culture. But the way in which, like, there has to be a way in which we can try to help generally understand it, which is why we're describing it as, say, anchor joy, etc. So that it can be, you can give it a name and then study it a little better because there's a common understanding which transcends language, culture, values, and then figure it out from there. And I have a feeling that every country or every different culture has a slight variation on this, which is all possibly valid. Yeah.
I think there's also one thing, emotions are very normal in every culture, right? So you go to, I mean, from the book that you gave me, How Emotions Are Made. So they stated this one thing wherein like this group of scientists, they went to even the smallest tribal groups that were disconnected from the world back then, right? And they showed a few pictures of exaggerated emotions, mind you, not like subtle emotions, proper exaggerated emotions to these people, and even they had words for that. So emotions obviously are normal in every other language, right? Every other culture. It's just the way you the what varies is what part of emotions you actually look at, or what are the certain amount of the emotional circle that you only focus on. Because you focus on something and then you don't really focus on the other because it's either socially unacceptable or it's something that you just should not do in general, right? So I think again, a lot of our emotions do come from the root of social acceptance. As you said, inward out, outward in. It's, I think it kind of goes in a circle, it keeps going in a circle, right? But you react to something that your emotions like come forward when you react to something. At the same time, your emotions are primarily shaped from reactions. So over the course of time, you obviously you have kept reacting. That's why you have the same set of emotions that you will show to something or somebody. Because I think emotions are also very rooted in our DNA because the concept of being scared of something also comes from generations of people, right? You would obviously be directly scared of a snake, but then whenever you were a kid, you have been scared of snakes, right? So it's also something that's very hereditary. That your ancestors were scared of something, now you are also scared of them. So it's very circle. It's like it comes from inside, but then it's also a reaction to something.
It does. And this actually brings full circle to emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is it lives in the space between something happening and how you respond. Reaction actually is what causes a lot of lack of regulation of emotions. So, the difference between the two words is when you react, it is uh, the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that is meant to protect you. It is you're allowing it to hijack your entire system and then just do whatever feels, right? Without any thought or consequence as to what that might lead to. For example, some people have outbursts of anger. Um, when that happens, they've just been swept up in the emotion. A response is you taking just a couple of seconds to pause, recognize the emotion, label it, and decide whether you want to engage in the same way that you were feeling just that 1 or 2 seconds before, or you want to have a more um, regulated response to it, right? And reactions are what we see in dramas, whereas in life, what it calls for is a lot more responding to a situation. Because the more we react, um, the more it it's just unprocessed emotions going out loud, which more often than not tends to not end the right way. So,
I mean, there's always a saying that you should never, react to a situation instantly. You should take your time. You should wait, and then you should react to something.
easier said than done.
Yeah, I know, I know. I have been the victim of it, so I would know.
All of us have.
Okay, so you said that you have worked with a lot of people, right? And I think this is also something that you have said over the course of time, that whenever you were in your company, in your previous company, whenever you worked with them, you made sure that the environment you created for your subordinates or your juniors or your team in general was something, or a place where they both thrived and they were open to discuss their issues and problems. I think this is something that every corporate has been trying to do, or
Some of them do that pretty well.
yeah, and, or they say, and because I'll tell you one thing. Every textbook I've ever read on OB, organization behavior, in my college, they always say that you need to make sure that the people who work in your company, their emotions are regulated. That you need to understand that they
Is
have.
it? Is that what books say?
Yes.
You need to make sure that emotions are regulated.
Yes. You need to make sure that they, not like as in authoritative way, as in like, again, at the end of the day, you want productive employees, right? So you have to make sure that whatever the issues that they are having is either taken care of if it's from the company side, or if they're bringing in issues from their households, they have specific ways wherein they can make sure that that issue is not affecting their work. Because at the end of the day, your work and your household is very connected together. If you are upset in your house, you will be upset in your work. If you are upset with your work, you will be upset in your house. And then it just goes in a full circle. You are not productive when you're in your workplace because of some kind of an issue. You bring that home, and you are upset at your house. It affects your everyday routine that you do in your own house, and then when you go back, you are just as unproductive as you were the previous day.
Right.
So it keeps going on in a full circle, right? So how did you make sure that that was not an issue in your company?
Uh, so normally, a lot of companies try to draw a line between personal and professional. Like you rightly said, they're intertwined. It's very difficult to not take from one place to the other because, look, let's face it, assuming that you sleep about 6 to 8 hours on average, if you're consciously awake for 16 to 18 hours a day, the process of getting ready, traveling, going to work, coming back, by itself covers about 60 to 80% of the day. Right? In that time, there's of course things happening in your life which will impact how the outlook for your day is. You know how sometimes you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. That carries into our work too. If we don't take a moment to understand it and figure out what's really going on and address that. And then if you're in a negative mood or negative state of mind when we enter work, we are most likely to also end up saying and doing things which will put other people in that state. Because when we are not able to understand and process our emotions, it comes out in ways that we don't intend for it to come out. And the same happens vice versa. A lot of people come home with a lot of work baggage, and then they end up saying or doing something inadvertent, and then ruining the relationship for that day or even a longer time at home. I think one thing that it's not just me. I think in the company that I'm working for, it's a place where there's a lot of people centricity, and there's a recognition of the fact that you're not really able to separate the two a lot, and there's an openness to actually genuinely caring about people, not just from a work perspective. So, if someone's having a migraine or a headache on a particular day, right? I usually tell them to take that day off, or I tell them to reduce the workload or shift something onto me. Um, because when you're in that state of mind, it's really hard to give 100% focus and attention, and that's fair. Trying to squeeze out the best work from in that state of mind is not ideal. It doesn't work for them. It also doesn't work for us. Like the outcome of it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And when people are unwell, there's no point in forcing them to work. There are days that people need off. Give them the time to recover and come back. So the thing that you said was that it keeps creating that cycle where we keep going in that loop is what we call burnout. When you burn out, basically what happens is your tank is on empty, but you're just constantly pressing your foot on the gas and hoping that the vehicle is moving forward. The vehicle obviously being the body. If you don't allow time for the body to recover, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that might be, they're never going to be able to give you that 100 that you're looking for anyway. So one thing we've always done is we've said, look, work will always happen. There's always tomorrow. And we've always looked at our employees as people who we look at them staying for the long term, not for the short term. So our decisions are also done. If they take one holiday today, how does it matter in the long run? And I can understand the fear behind this. It's that okay, they take one, then they'll ask for another, then they'll ask for another. Look, people who are genuinely passionate and who, through this system, what I believe is that we build trust, and the people automatically get motivated and happy in a way that they want to start giving back because they're being given. And that creates a system in which people want to do even without you actually monitoring that system. So I found that the more leaves I give, the less people actually want to take those leaves in the long run because they feel such a sense of loyalty and wanting to give back to the organization that they actually don't exploit that system. But most policies are built that way. They're built from a standpoint of people are going to take advantage of the system. So why don't we put things in place to prevent them from exploiting the system? Like we put in a punch in, let's say, punch in at 10, punch out at 7. How does it matter if you're there for 9 hours? If you're only mentally and emotionally giving 4 hours worth of actual work. But if I had a person who never punches in or out, but they're actually giving me 8-9 hours of dedicated good work, what am I actually solving for? So what we do is we look at the outcomes and we say what makes sense for the outcome, which is a long-term approach. We create a place where people feel safe.
I think this also brings forth the question that when you said that okay, if they like what they're doing, then they'll be loyal to the work, right? There's also this humongous population who have no idea what they're doing. It also stems from not knowing themselves early on, which I think is also a big issue because again, 90% of kids nowadays in India, they don't really have as much as of career options as a lot of other people do. It's it it stems from various different reasons. One, parents might only want them to go for one certain career path,
Correct.
or they might not be aware of the fact that there are other career paths that you can actively take and actively be a part of and earn as much money. I think you also say something like there's a humongous skill gap in the world because of AI, right? So, as much as there are jobs that are being created, there's also a humongous part of the population who have no idea that there are jobs that are created and they might actually like these types of jobs.
Right.
And this also stems from the fact that they are not allowed to be a part of the global population as a lot of us are, right? Because of various reasons, right? They don't have the accessibility, or because they're writing exam. And this happened to me while I was giving my boards. My mother was like, "No Wi-Fi in my household." After a certain amount of time,
No Wi-Fi.
no Wi-Fi. After like maybe 7 o'clock. This by the time it hits 7, you can download all your papers, whatever information that you want to download from internet. But after that, you won't have access to that because you have to focus on studying. So it also creates an environment wherein you cannot actively go out and figure out what you actually like, because you, again, 90% of our students actually depend on something like this. They
Or
depend
even
on
if you
their
do want
career.
to figure it out, like you're being told what you should do.
Yeah.
In India, predominantly is like 3-4 things. Right?
Yeah.
You're engineers, you're doctors, you're lawyers, you're anything else? Computer science.
Anything of
Predominantly, there's like
Yeah.
4 or 5. You do these, are doctors.
Yeah.
If I missed that, or
No,
I'm
you
saying
didn't
anything.
miss that.
So kids don't really get to experiment much.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's also this thing. There's a lot of people I know from when I was from my schools who like writing. They did not end up writing as much,
You don't pursue it.
because again, there's no point of writing, right? But then after becoming older, I realized that there's a job called copyright for copywriters, and they get paid hefty amounts. And specifically, if you do freelancing and are not part of a corporation, right? So these people, they are not even allowed to explore themselves. Hence, they are not allowed to explore what they want to be and how they can be free. And these people, obviously, they bring in that years of you know torment, years of not being allowed to do what they want back into the corporate. And again, they obviously are not as productive, because when they don't really like the work they're doing, it might be great, it might be good, but they don't like it. And you cannot say that okay, that's bad, because again, if there's a work that you primarily don't like, you will obviously end up not doing it or hating it as much as the work is good, right? So that there is also that problem that keeps coming forward.
There is. But I've found that primarily there are 4 things that drive a person to enjoying their job, and the job isn't necessarily that particular skill that you learn. It is just okay. Is this something that I want to do? One is that they're really good at that particular niche. Let's say I'm a coder. I'm great at coding. I want to code. I'll code anywhere as long as I get to code,
Yeah.
because this makes sense to me. I like it.
Mhm.
The second one is if there's a higher passion or a higher purpose that's associated with the company, like the impact that the organization is trying to make or the work makes on society, on people in general, maybe that is something that really appeals to you as a person. So even though you may not like the particular thing that you're doing in the company, the outcome or the impact supersedes that. So purpose, value, that's the second one. Third one is obviously income. Right? When you're earning well, even if these two are not great, sometimes people stick it out just for this. And the fourth one is how people feel in the space in which they're working, which is the people, the culture, the value that do they feel recognized, do they feel rewarded, do they feel valued, the emotions that go with the people, etc. So mostly people work in a combination of these. So even if someone doesn't enjoy necessarily the skill, there are other factors which will still matter to them. And the one that we are focusing on right now is the fourth one, which is important for employers to understand that you're really passionate employees will be impacted by how you treat them in the workspace, because it is a lever that people gauge on a day to day to take the decision as to, if I can do the same thing somewhere else, why should I or not? And often the answer can be based on how they're feeling, how they feel they're being treated, right? So yes, you're right. There is Life is not ideal. We don't get to always do what we want. I want to be an actor. I'm sitting here talking about emotions. I've worked in operations for 15 years. Uh, there are some people who get to chase that and it works out for them. But we have to remember that for every one success story, there's 100 other people who are failing. And life is not rosy. And sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. So in that situation where you're doing something you don't really enjoy, how can life be better towards you? How can you be better towards what's happening to yourself?
There's also something that, I mean, there's also something that you just said about it's very, again, very personal, right? Emotions are very personal to you.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you need to inculcate certain habits in your daily life? Yeah.
I'm a creature of habit.
I know, exactly.
And I've been
right.
told a lot by my therapist that is not. I should learn to free that up a little bit.
Mhm.
So I have a whole bunch of habits,
Mhm.
and I thought that those habits brought me structure in life,
Mhm.
because that's something that I was always craving. Um, I've come from a lot of, you can say, chaos. So for me, structure makes a lot of sense. It calms me down because I feel like I can control a little bit of the chaos that's happening around me. But in that pursuit of that structure over time, I realized that everything when you do it too much is always has unintended consequences. So whenever structure fades away a little bit for me, I feel like uh, I'm losing control of life, and that's something that I've been working on recently is letting go, and not having so much of habit based. So for me, like waking up, going to the gym, or trying to work out is something that I I feel really good when I go and work out. So it's something that I have to have in my life. It's always calmed me down. But I used to do things like 6 to 6:30. I do this 6:30 to 6:45. Compartmentalize, maximize the efficiency of my day. But it's life is so hard to control that whenever that didn't happen exactly that way, I felt like everything is going wrong.
I'm a totally opposite person.
You just go with the flow.
Yeah, from when I was a kid, my father has always been like, you need to have a timetable, you need to have a routine for everything. I sit down, and mind you, I have sat down, I have wasted at least 2 hours on creating the perfect routine, stuck it on a wall in a place I can see every day, never seen it after I stuck it there. So yeah, no, timetable until unless it's necessary. For example, my college timetable, nothing I have ever followed till date has a time limit to it. So I just do things whenever I wake up, whenever before I go to sleep. And by the time if I specifically for me, I base a lot of things on my life in according to the deliverables, right? So I need to get this done. It can be like I have to make my breakfast, I have to get this done, I have to cook something, I have to batch meal prep for the week, I have to get that done. Or I have to study for something, I have to get that done. So in my life, everything depends on getting things done rather than doing things during a certain time limit. Because I have realized I focus a lot on things when I'm doing them compared to when I think that I'll do them. If I think that I'll do them, I'll never do them.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, in one of these therapy sessions, I learned that by creating such a rigid routine, I'm actually disincentivizing myself because sometimes I feel like I have to do it just because of routines in place. Even if I don't feel like going to the gym that day, right? I try, and when I do that, it doesn't feel the same way as when I naturally want to go and do that. So actually, the what you're describing is a far better practice even in our work life because people tend to focus on the output, like the way that I'm describing it, right? You're 10 to 7. What you're focusing on is exactly what should be focused on outcomes. Uh, It doesn't mean like, obviously, that does not imply that at work everyone comes in and goes out at whatever time they want as long as outcomes are there. Because unless everyone's working in their own individual capacity, if you have to communicate with other people, obviously you need them around, you need them active. You can't have where there's 5 teams working together towards one problem. One team decides, I only do a night shift. That doesn't work. It's obviously focused on the outcome of the end stakeholder, right? But in that, if you can find harmony, let's say some people come in at 10, some come at 11, but there's a commonality overlap where people are able to figure it out. It's far better because you're giving people the freedom to figure things out for themselves. not enforcing like I have for myself artificial boundaries, which will probably disincentivize you from actually wanting to do that thing in the first place. There are a couple of things I still have a couple of boundaries around just because I like to feel that calm, even if it's just psychological for me. But this is something that it took me a really long time to learn.
Actually, I think the thing is there needs to be a sweet spot in amongst in both of our ideologies. Me being outcome based and you being routine based, because there has to be routine. For example, you say that if you don't go to when you go to gyms on certain wait, how you say that if you don't go to gym on days when you don't feel like going, you you overall you're feeling okay. At the end of the day, you feel bad overall, right? You don't feel as good as you wanted to feel.
Like the session doesn't feel as
Exhilarating.
fulfilling.
Yeah, fulfilling. Got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the thing is with me, if I don't want to go to gym, I won't go to gym, right? For example, and that not wanting to go and not going just ends up being like, okay, I didn't go to gym for one day. Hey, I didn't go to gym yesterday. I won't go to gym today. Won't go to gym. The entire week I didn't go to gym. Yeah, it becomes not doing it at all.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I think there has to be some sweet spot wherein you
Between the two.
yeah, where you do things, where you drag yourself out, where you create habits and you create routines. At the same time, you need to give yourself enough leeway because you need to be yourself at some part during some part of the day. Because 90% of our day is engulfed in routines because you follow them even if you don't want to, right? You have to get out of your house.
There's a meeting from this time to this time.
Yeah. You have to
You
get
have
out
to
of
be in
your
your
house, you have
classroom
to
at
go
this
this,
time.
you have to go
You-
do
yeah,
that. Yeah.
that's true.
So yeah, you are engulfed in routine anyways.
Right.
So by the time that you go back home, you get that 30 minutes, 40 minutes, let's say, because some people like sleeping a lot like me, right? And when they end up waking up at 3 a.m., you're like, wow, that was a good nap. Where did I sleep? Oh, 7. God damn it. So, yeah. So, when you do that, when you do something like that, you realize that, okay, I have time from 3 to maybe 6, 7. I have nothing to do now. And so, creating a routine helps us in those moments a lot, right? Maybe if I wouldn't have gotten, if I wouldn't have slept at 7 o'clock, I would have just dragged myself to the gym, or would have done something else with my time. I would have slept at a good 10 o'clock and woke up at 6 o'clock. It would have made way more sense to me, right? So I think that's the thing. At the end of the day, you need to have the sweet spot between routine and no routine, right?
This reminds me of the tastiest things are most unhealthy for you. This is what comes to my head when I hear this. But
Yeah.
correct. Like most things in life, the sweet spot is in routine. Absolutely. Which is also with emotions. Also, that's true. People think everything's about positive emotions, and that's not the case. That's also a problem. If you're riding high all the time, it's again the same as having a full tank of gas and just pressing the pedal without letting go at all. Your body cannot take that level of high constantly. The sweet spot is actually in between. In fact, what could be positive for one person could be negative for another person and vice versa. That's why regulation of emotions is important. Because you don't want to be only any one emotion. And we feel up to, it's said, between 6 to 900 emotions a day. So finding that balance is what is important. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. That's the thing, right? That you need to find balance. At the same time, I think there's also this big issue that we have. As much as we find balance, our life never lets us have that balance. So I think we also need to forgive ourselves when we can't balance our emotions. Because there are days where you will have outbursts of something or the other because again you couldn't finish what you wanted to do, right? Or you couldn't do something, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. There are a lot of things that happen, right? So I think there has to be balance, but at the same time there has to be a concept where you forgive yourself when you couldn't uphold the balance that you wanted to uphold.
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of things that one need to focus on at the end of the day, but then people end up not focusing on them, and sometimes they do. So it's hard. At the same time, I think you need to be comfortable with yourself. You need to be comfortable enough with yourself, right? So I mean, I agree. Okay, there's also something I wanted to ask you specifically about your, corporate life. Because you also you don't really handle emotions with your colleagues, right? You also handle emotions with other people. Like, that because that's a main part of your job, going to students, talking to them through a
No.
lot of issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this ecosystem, the most important stakeholders.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have to, you talk to them, talk them through a lot of things. Right? So, what is something that you always focus on? Because I think this is also something that everybody needs to know. Because sometimes you're not going to regulate your own emotions. You're going to also have to help other people regulate their emotions, because they are kind of somehow during times they are primary stakeholders in certain situations, right?
Right.
And you are just the secondary ones.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you have to make sure that they are also regulated as much as you are.
Right.
So how do you do that during those times?
The first thing that we have to know when we're dealing with someone else's emotions is that for them, their emotions are valid, and they think they're feeling something that for them is true. So dismissing it is probably the worst thing that a person can do. The second thing is, a lot of times people don't really want an answer. They just want to be heard and want to get their frustration out. So always let the other person speak, and then once everything is out, specifically in this case we're talking about students. Like usually when I need to talk to students, that means something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
That means they're agitated by something. In that moment of agitation, the first thing that you should allow the person to do is to let them talk. Because as soon as they express themselves, at least that feeling that was sitting with them in their chest, it comes out. And once it's out, their defenses fall. So usually what happens is, because if we were in that same situation, um, we're guarded. Our shields are up. And by that, what it means is that we're in a state where we're not willing to listen. And in that state, trying to reason and logic with someone will never work. Go, sit. There we go. Cool. So, the first thing that we should do is allow them to get it off their chest. As soon as that happens, what happens is your guard goes down. And when your guard goes down, you open yourself up to being more open to listening and then having a conversation. The third thing is separating emotion from fact. This is really hard, because a lot of times people just pile on a lot of unnecessary information in detail to the actual problem, and then it just blows out of proportion.
Obviously.
Which again, in their perspective, it makes sense because there's a sequence or a series probably of things that are going right and wrong. But once the conversation actually begins, writing down everything so that you actually are. So one thing that I do is always make sure I write in some way, shape, or form exactly what they're saying in points. The reason being, it gives them the understanding that I'm actually listening and not just saying, okay, talk, while in my head there's a monkey with tangerines doing its own thing. And when I actually hear what they're saying, it gives me the ability to understand which part of this is fact and which part of this is emotion. The fact is what we play out. You only want to address the ones which are factual. The emotion is, I hear you, I understand, but it's not exactly relevant to the problem that you're stating. Because, and then you back it either with fact or acknowledge it when you're actually wrong about something. you've not taken the necessary steps. You do want to let that person, just that you're right, I'm sorry, I acknowledge that we couldn't do this for you, it goes a long way for them. They're not looking always for an answer, they're looking for, do you understand what you've put me through? And can you try not to do that, whether for me or for other people? Even Zomato has this in their policy, or like any Swiggy, Zomato, whatever delivery apps you have. There's an option at the bottom that says, I just wanted to let you know that this particular problem is what I encountered. Not a refund, not a replacement, nothing. There's just a line of text that says, I just want to let you know I had this issue. Right? Because sometimes life is just that. Is that, hey, other people should not have this issue, so I want to report that this restaurant has done this with me. It could impact another customer. Mm-hmm. That psychology flows everywhere. Right? And then when we talk about fact, give them objective reality of things that they have raised, which we have actually had the ability to change, so that in their mind they are reframing or rewiring all of those exaggerated situations down to actually what is a problem and has that been addressed or not. And the biggest thing that we can do when the situation is getting bad is not address it and not take steps to actually reassure the person that we understand where you're coming from, we will do something about it if we can. And you need not give them the perfect solution, but just telling them, hey, I get it, and I'll try my level best to do this, to do something for you that will maybe alleviate a little bit of your discomfort. That works out perfectly. I feel the problem is not addressing the problem.
There's also one important thing that we missed when we're talking about this is the fact that we are talking about a specific situation where somebody are they okay?
Yeah, they're fighting.
Oh, okay, fine. That's what it was.
Yeah, they do that.
Very well.
When you have one brain cell between three cats, it happens.
Okay. Yeah, so there's also one big issue that what everybody has is that the fact that we are currently talking about one party being agitated, the other party having to understand that it's their fault and recognizing and accepting it, right? There's also this other part of it where one party is agitated, other party is not at fault, right? But then, for example, my friend is agitated. I am not the reason why they are agitated, but they're agitated anyways, right? So there has to be some way, shape or form wherein we have to. Can you not? Can you not?
I used to do. You come here. You're being naughty. Okay, come. Come, I'll give you a hug. Come.
Yeah. So
are you saying they're not, you're actually not the problem, but they're agitated at you, or they're just agitated?
Agitated in general.
Okay.
Because obviously, I think you would have had to handle situations like this to be your life, right? So what do you do during those times?
Easiest thing is to let them talk. If they're not agitated at you, then they just want to vent. If they want to vent, give them a space to vent. Say that you're here for them, and you may not be able to give them a solve, but you're here to listen to them.
I think this is something everybody needs to know.
I think it's becoming more common. I think people are learning it more, which, in my opinion, is a positive sign in the right direction. Because I don't think I've seen that display much growing up or in our older generations than I am seeing from people today who are in the workspace, who are understanding this better.
I think this is not just about the workspace, right? It's about everything. At any given point, you need to understand when you need to take accountability, when you just need to be there 1 year, you have to lend 1 year to mentor. I think there's also one important crucial part when it comes to venting is that you need to actually listen to them so that they don't feel like they just talking to the air. So I think that's also a very important crucial part of it. I feel like me and my friends we do that a lot because when the other person is venting, we just sit there and we try to listen to them. We accept whatever they're saying. We sometimes give our opinions, and sometimes when we don't really have an opinion, we keep quiet.
Right.
So and I've also realized that giving them an out or giving them a solution to their problems doesn't really make the problem go away. They will never listen to what you said. They would figure out solution on their own, but they need to have that space to complain first before
Be
they
able to.
actually go ahead and solve the issue themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, it clears the cloudiness that's surrounding the objectivity that's trapped.
Mm.
So it's kind of like uh, when you actually give them the space to vent, it's like that ray of sunshine that can break through the clouds. That's what happens. It starts parting the clouds, and then you finally get sunshine. So yeah, yeah.
I think there are a lot of layers to it, right? There are, again, as we literally spoke right now, you understand how to navigate through your emotions at home, amongst your friends and other safe spaces. Then you go to your corporate, which I would like to say is comparatively not as safe, because again they
Yeah.
are again not your friends, they are your colleagues, you work there, and it is also kind of related to a very give and take situation when you give your work to get back an income.
While you're saying that, though, interestingly, what I found is there are a lot of people who find solace in that work because they're not able to find that peace of mind or safety at home. That's I don't know if that's a majority of people. I don't think so, or at least I would not like to believe that.
Mhm.
But there are some people for whom work is their peace of mind, work is their safety. They find their meaning and purpose here because unfortunately they may not be able to find it in their personal lives. But yeah, there was just a when you were talking, it just struck my mind that I have come across people for whom
I mean, there has to be certain segments of people everywhere, right?
yeah,
Some people who find solace in work, some people who find solace in home, some people who are fine with both
solace
of
in
them.
both
Yeah,
and their friends.
yeah, everybody else, right? So but then that's also something that everybody needs to understand, that you need to regulate your emotions in a safe space.
Mm.
That you have to understand regulating in a more safer space, so that you can go ahead and go to the more outer spaces of your life, wherein you're watched, wherein you feel like you're watched, wherein all your actions have reactions and everything else. So when you go ahead and
See, Newton's law came on.
actually, but then when you go ahead and react or give your reactions in any place, in any way, shape, or form,
Mm.
you also know that what kind of reactions you will get from other people when you react to certain things, right? So I think there's
That's
also
true.
very
Sometimes.
yes, important that you regulate it. You know how to regulate your emotions, so that later on when you find people wherein you have to make sure that you do indeed regulate your emotions, you can regulate it there. And I think it's also very important for corporates to understand that you will not be getting one similar type of person, right?
But yeah, it's impossible.
Right.
Because again, we're talking about if emotion is built from beliefs, values, and experiences, everyone's life experience is different.
Mhm.
So everyone's outlook towards the same situation could end up being different. And then you have the combination of hundreds and thousands of people who are coming in with different beliefs, values, and experiences. It's never going to be. That's why it's so complicated.
And there's also one important thing that people change over the course of time, right? So you might have gotten somebody who was a vibe match at one point of time, but then over the course of their life, maybe like in 2 3 years, they don't end up being the same vibe match, because again they have had experiences in their lives wherein they don't feel the same, right? So yeah, this also something that one needs to take care of, and people need to know how to navigate through those issues. There's also that part of life, right? And corporate. I don't know how many people know how to navigate through it, but
Okay.
not many, right? Yeah, because
I mean, even I struggle with it. Even if I might know the subject matter better or might have practical tools about it, it's, it isn't an easy thing because it's not an objective thing. You know math, you can understand math, you can see it play out in your head. Emotions are still being understood. There is no concrete, perfect science behind it. It it is very complicated, and that does lead to a lot of chaos. And that's, I mean, see, corporates won't naturally understand this. And like, whoever it is in a corporate, whether you're founder or otherwise, again, life is what teaches us this because one, we don't have the formal education for that. And second is, for the first 18 to 22 years of our life, we're told that we have to be number one. And then at some point in life, what happens is you're asked to be a part of a team. The team is supposed to excel. In that, you do play a role, and there is a certain level of individualism there as well, like your praises, your recycling. But it's a drastic mindset change between how we've been conditioned to think, because we've been told one is right and one is wrong. We've been told number one is best, and everything below that is not as good. There are some places that only recognize number one. So you're always in the constant state of competing with everyone else. And then you come into a place where you're supposed to work with everyone else.
Yeah.
Right? And because there's no foundational understanding of emotions until then, it is unrealistic to expect a system in which people will just get along. Like the two just don't fit. Right? A lot of companies have now started hiring counselors and therapists on site. But again, the root of the problem is that understanding of emotions, why they're important, and then understanding why other people's emotions are important. If that is there, then automatic fundamental understanding of like just basic humanity comes into the workplace. Why it's important to respect and treat people with kindness and compassion comes into place. That automatically makes the workplace better. We just find it really hard because we feel like it's a skill that isn't measured, it's not taught, and we're told a lot it doesn't matter. So we just ignore it. But I think that's changing.
It has to change a bit, right? Because I mean, working is a very crucial part of everybody's life. I mean, as much as I think nowadays the concept of like freelancing, not doing remote jobs has been extremely glorified. But then working is a very crucial part of everybody's life, right? So you can't let go of it.
Right.
So the best thing you can do from your space is that you accept it, make it a better place to be at.
Be a better human.
Be a better human indeed. And I think that should bring us to the conclusion of this podcast today.
It's a good way to close.
Yeah, that was a very good way to close actually. So I think that's about it for today, and we'll see them again next week.
Thank you for hosting this. This was fun.
I hope you had a nice time.
I had a great time.
Nice. That's good to hear. Would be better next time.
That's good.